Welcome to the land of no easy answers. Our world, though more connected than ever, seems to have forgotten how to connect. Everywhere you look, the disconnect is obvious, from nature to the people around us, and even within ourselves. This is Alex Knight, and thank you for joining us as we attempt to unravel the mysteries of the mind and your universe. Now let's meet our panel. Over in one corner is Kristin Rumohr. And in the other corner, Stewart.
What?
There he is. Today's topic is, why do people make bad decisions?
Hey, speak for yourself, buddy.
This should be
all of my decisions are great.
Oh, wow. That's you're
absolutely the right decision to be made at that time.
You're quite confident in your abilities. I thought this was a fascinating article that Kristen posted here on worth.com, and it goes into a lot more detail than I probably needed, because we've all made mistakes in our lives. But I'm fascinated by the structure of the human brain and how we process information, and how over the last 25 years, let's say, with the internet becoming so ingrained in our lives and technology being so ingrained in our lives, you know, with phones that we're now having a problem with being addicted to, how does that affect the human brain and all the information we process, and can we process all that information properly, and how does that affect our daily decision making? And Kristen, I would like to hear from you on this specifically, because I know you deal with mental health all the time with some of the patients that you see as a holistic clinical counselor. Did I get your title right?
Yep.
So, like, how can speak to this, because this is something that I think is kind of like in your wheelhouse with how people process information.
Mm-hmm. Specifically about how people make bad decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
Something in all of our wheelhouses, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're all human, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
At least I think so.
Hopefully. Mostly.
And our brains, I mean, they're set up to obviously make our lives easier, right? They're a tool here to help us.
Is that what it's doing?
I mean, I hope so.
Oh, okay. I get very confused on that sometimes, because the brain seems to operate against me in a lot of cases.
Well, it's, I mean, the most massive supercomputer you can actually ever hope to dream up, right? And as you've mentioned a lot of times, Aaron, this thing doesn't come with a user manual, right? So we're all just kind of plodding about trying to figure out how it works, and it seems to create its own shortcuts for things to make processing information easier. And kind of what happens over time is it gets whittled down. And so we just create these boxes, essentially, for how we go about our day-to-day lives, right? It's just the sheer amount of information that we're taking in. It's not possible to dissect every piece of that to make sense of it. We need to have some sort of mechanism to filter it out. And that's kind of how we develop, you know, these boundaries and stereotypes and things like that. And then arguably, as the subject we're talking about, when these boundaries become very rigid, we start to then take all information and filter it through the exact same way. Right? And arguably that's maybe how bad decisions come about is, oh, well, this should work, right? And afterwards you hit yourself on the head and go, well, that was really stupid.
Well,
why didn't I look at that a different way in the first place?
Yeah. Well, the brain wants to break it down into black or white.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then that's the problem, is that it doesn't allow for the kind of dimensional, you know, aspects that go into any of our relational, you know, any of our social constructs require a lot more nuance than just having black or white answers for really any of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and unfortunately those simplifications lead us down the merry path of, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. This worked before, doesn't it? It'll be great.
Yeah. That's an interesting point that you make about simplification, because that's one of the things that this article talks about, is that how the human brain is prone to simplifying everything. And I'm sure having to multitask and have all these different streams of information being thrown at us, I'm sure that probably doesn't help, right? Because the internet's a blessing, right? I mean, there's so many great things about it, but also there's so many, it can be used to just spread misinformation, spread conspiracy theories that, it just makes it so easy for someone to go down a rabbit hole, right? To confirm their own biases, if you will. And it's probably not helping us right now. And you touched on a good point there about nuance. And it just seems, and this kind of ties in with cancel culture, the concept of cancel culture, which we've talked about in the past too, is where is the nuance in our conversation anymore, right? When you get the Twitter mob, there's no nuance. It's just either, it seems like you either accept someone or they do something wrong and we need to cancel them, we need to banish them, we need to throw them in the fire, like they're just persona non grata, right? There's no nuance in conversation at all, be it politics, whatever subject, it doesn't matter, right?
Well, I think the internet travels faster than our puny little minds are equipped to process in a lot of ways. Right? Mm-hmm. Like information can get put on the internet faster than you have like how many millions of videos are being posted every day? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the idea that you're even potentially capable of assimilating any of that information in any meaningful manner and trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong and what's truth and what's not is just silly. Like there's just no way for us to process this.
I think we could be. I just think we're very far away from that, right? That's probably where our brains will end up evolving to. But as they are right now, we're just not equipped to deal with this level of input.
Well, and that's where we get to the problem of multitasking. Like the internet makes you believe that you can multitask, and we just really can't. Our brains just don't do that. It allows you to think that you can by making these switches really, really, really quickly. But the fact of the matter is that if you're going from anything you have to focus on to any other thing that you have to focus on, it requires energy from your brain in order to do that. Mm-hmm. And that eats up. That's why we're having a lot of these anxiety issues, stress-related issues. A good point from here was actually that stress-related physical disorders are best understood as disorders of arousal. Right? Where your brain is over-fixated on something, and that makes your actual physical body react in a way that induces stress, right? Or is a stress-related, from this. So, we're not really even aware of how the internet is affecting our brains on a the DNA. Like they've shown that apparently people who have gone through starvation 100 years ago, their grandchildren have DNA changes that actually are the effect of that. Mm-hmm. They don't really know how that works, but apparently DNA stores even that kind of trauma.
That's fascinating.
Right? So the idea that, our brains are changing at a rate that will allow us to keep up with the internet, right? Short of integrating us with the internet, this transhumanism, being able to actually take a computer and install it into our brains that allows us to actually see the internet through some form of visual communication. I think that'd be about the only way that we'd be able to even get close to assimilating the flow of information that's coming out of there.
That's actually a good point. I would have to agree with that. I think that if we're not able to invent a technology that can actually enhance, like if we can't put a chip in our brain that actually augments our brain so that it can process and retain and assimilate information at a more efficient rate. I mean, if we just leave it up to evolution, I mean, it's probably going to take us as a species, if we don't, destroy the planet or destroy ourselves first, it's probably going to take us another 500,000 to 1 million years to really see any bump in the needle, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For us to be equipped to take that information, at least, yeah, for sure. Yeah, if it's even possible for the physiology of our brains,
that's
to
other thing.
Do that.
That's an unknown, right? We don't.
Yeah, we have no idea.
We don't.
I mean, we've got lots of technology and brain scans and imaging available, but we still have absolutely no idea how this thing actually works for the most part, you know?
Which is why this is so fascinating. You know, the idea that these simplifications that we created during, you know, days that we were hunting down giant sloths that are now extinct, right? Like that those processes are the ones that are driving us today. You know, is just fascinating to me that you know, the brains that they developed are still being used by us, and we now have to try to overcome a lot of that stuff to get past and move into this new thing that we're trying to create, where we actually have this civilization and society and stuff, right?
But then we still arguably need our monkey mind as well, right?
Yep, absolutely.
It's kind of our baser instincts. Right.
For
if we
what?
try to go too far, well, for everything, right? Just in being an animal, being a human, right? We all need to eat. We all need to sleep. We all need to, you know, take care of bodily functions in general. So this mind is important for that. And I think if we get too far away from it, we go, you know, our consciousness is our own worst enemy for a lot of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This idea that we can do anything, right? We are actually free in a way that unconscious, well, that we know of, animals are not, right? Because they're a slave to base instincts. We have a choice on how we want to evolve.
Okay.
And I think that's a big cause of human suffering is, shit, I've got all this freedom. What do I do with it?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's easier to just simply be an animal, right? I don't need to think about what I need to do tomorrow. I don't need to think about college. I don't need to think about going to work, right? I just need to get some food.
I should post. I was reading an article about the psychology of cats and what we can learn from them, right? And about how they don't worry about, like, none of the animals have created death rituals. Right. So when an animal dies, they all just they recognize that, you know, what was there isn't there anymore, and then they kind of move on. Right? Like, we're the only ones that go back to our you know, ancestors or whatever graves and go through these rituals of leaving flowers and blah blah blah, right? And it's just interesting that we have these constructs built over top of that are supposed to allow us this civilized society and, you know, blah blah blah, but in the end, are we just, you know, relying on those base instincts, right? Is this just we do this because that's what we've done? You know, or is this something that actually serves a purpose for us moving forward? Yeah.
That's no, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. So another one of the parts in here was that the physical or the primary function of the brain physiology is to dampen and regulate arousal. You know, and that was a fascinating little tidbit of information for me, right? Like, realistically, our brain just wants to go, hey, what's that? What's that? Hey, what's going on? What's over here? What's that? Right? And the rest of our brain is just going, it's okay, buddy. It's okay. Just calm. Right? Like, and literally has to just decide what it wants to pay attention to. Right. And that's, I think, again, where this internet thing becomes a problem, is that we're not equipped to decide which of this gigantic flow of information coming at us, what's important for us to actually be paying attention to. You know, and one of the things,
you know, a direct correlation. There's obviously tons of studies done about the increase in anxiety and depressive disorders with the increase of, obviously, technology, internet, social media, all of that. So to me, it says there is just too much stimulation, clearly, right? And if we can't deal with it, it's bound to cause issues. It's bound to cause anxiety, right? How do you shut that off?
And that's the problem. Our society doesn't give us any off switch for it. All it wants us to do is consume more.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where, you know, we have to actually apparently start movements to say, like, hey, man, just put the phone down for a bit. Go outside. It's cool. Right. Like, you know, and it's amazing that we still, you know, like, again, with the idea of neurogenesis, the only way to make brain cells grow is for exercise. You have to pump more blood into the brain. Right. Sitting on your butt doesn't do it because you're not actually actively pumping blood. Right. And so, again, the only way to make this happen is to get out there and do this, but our society wants us to be here on front of our screens or doing our right, and that becomes a real issue for, again, like the anxiety, and how do you compensate for those two things, right? This thing wants you to be doing this, but you really need to be doing that. Right? And that's where, again, these simplifications lead to these issues that we're having with even just the, you know, stress related diseases, you know, anxiety, all these things that are basically, again, problems of arousal, where we're being aroused all the time and we have no way to filter it out. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, and it makes me think too that there's, with all of that, that there's kind of like this compounding effect. Like it's just like all of these things working together to basically sabotage us, to that contribute to making bad decisions all the time, right? And this, you know, speaking of technology too, one of the areas where, you know, we can do responsible things that can try to help people. Like actually a few years ago, Apple made a really good enhancement to iOS. They introduced a feature called screen time because we are incapable of controlling ourselves. They had to build a feature so you can actually set limits for yourself so that it can monitor your own behavior and police, basically, so the device can police you because you can't do it. That's kind of sad, but I mean, I'm all for that. I think
they did that in response to the studies showing that they were using it too much, and so they went, "Oh, gee, maybe we should do something." Right? I don't know if it was necessarily for our benefit that they did it.
Well, I think it is because there's no benefit to Apple. It just makes it's something that if it can help people, if it can help individuals, families, kids from not being completely sucked in to the device that they're using, I think I'm all for that. I mean, that's a responsible way to use technology, and maybe the next step is just putting a freaking chip in our brain that can help us process information better, so we can spend even more time on Facebook or whatever is going to exist 50 years from now.
I'm terrified of that idea of chips in the brain, by the way.
Yeah,
I think that's horrible.
We've invented a chip in the brain that can accelerate things 100%. You can use all of your brain now, so you can process all that information from Facebook.
See, and that's like we do actually use all of our brain. That whole 10 or 20% of our brain thing is.
I don't know where that came from.
Well, it was because the older scans, right? Like I was just thinking, like the same thing with you were saying about you're afraid of the chips in the brain, and absolutely, you should be definitely skeptical of the first chips we put into brains. Right? Right. I always say you want to wait for the second or third generation of anything before you jump in, right? Just to see if it's worth, if it's not going to just like immediately explode in your hands as soon as you get a hold of it.
I'd want to wait until we can definitively say we've mapped out the entire brain and can say, okay, now we know exactly what all of this does, instead of, well, we've got this portion settled. Let's just stick a chip in there. That should do it.
Yeah. We're pretty sure if we zap you here, it does this.
Yeah. It's like,
want to find out?
Oh, hold on. I'm just getting a notification. The chip in my brain's telling me that there's a firmware update available to download.
And then his eyes glaze over for 10 seconds. He twitches a few times as he, okay, I'm ready to go. Here we go. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the chip in my brain. I'm telling you.
That's what the manufacturers keep telling me.
It's not my fault. It's my chip.
Updating.
Can you imagine?
Updating.
No, it's my programming. Yeah, my programming states that I must do this. It's
Alex just froze for a minute. Oh, sorry. I just had to restart my brain.
And they want me to pay $1,000 for the update. So, I mean...
Oh, it's a subscription, actually. I pay a monthly fee.
It would be.
It would be a subscription. Can you imagine if you stopped... If
your payments.
If you miss a payment, like all of a sudden you're stupid again. You know what? I think we're writing a script for a movie here.
I think Johnny Mnemonic did it already, didn't he?
Yeah,
basically.
I think so.
Chip in his brain. He was, yeah.
Scary stuff, but you know what? That's probably bordering on reality, right?
Well,
I mean, who knows? 50 to 100 years from now, what's going to happen?
I'd say probably sooner, the way we're going.
Well, and that's like realistically, I don't know if it's really anything to be afraid of. All these people that are like, oh no, it'll ruin humanity. I keep going, but maybe humanity kind of needs to be, ruined and remade. I mean, the problem is that we have been, a hyper predator on this world for probably too long now, and we need to actually start addressing it. Right.
I think it could be the next step of evolution. That would make sense, right?
But that's where, like, if we tasked an AI with coming up with solutions to fix things, and if unfortunately that AI came up with there's too many people and we need to readjust. Yeah. I mean,
well, that's, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there are companies now that have created AIs that can write songs now. They can write lyrics and music.
Mm-hmm. They can do paintings. And they can do all sorts
augmented reality seems to be the next thing that is where companies are investing money in. But what's wrong with regular reality? I'd like to know. Mm-hmm. Like, really? No, I'm serious. I'm not even joking. What's wrong with regular reality that we need augmented reality?
We've created all of these things that are supposed to make our lives easier. Right? Yeah. Like that was the development of the internet and, having smartphones, device in your palm, access to everything anytime you want it. It was all meant to make our lives easier, but we kind of missed the mark somewhere along the way, right? Instead of making it easier, we didn't use it properly, right? And so now it's just gone way too far the other way. And you're right. What is wrong with reality? It's just we need to scale it back and understand that these are tools that we have developed. So how do we hit the reset button? Let's go back and be like, okay, no, none of this like frivolous stuff. Get rid of that.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the problem is that you can't sell reality.
No.
That's the issue right there. Right. Like you can't sell people nature. Shouldn't
Bingo.
be able to.
Yep. That's a great point.
That's the problem. But you can absolutely create a virtual reality, justify this as, we're making things better for people and sell that. That's the whole issue with all of this is the money. Yeah. And that's been the issue with it from the day one was that somebody had to get paid to make it. Right. And so that justified whatever means they had to do to make that happen. And unfortunately, now that we've kind of ruined nature. Well, I mean, you can laugh, but I mean, look at it from satellites, man.
You're painting such an abysmal view of our
of civilization, and my issue with a lot of this is that, I keep saying that, a lot of this needs to be torn down and everybody goes, ha, 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 ha. And I go, no, like we need to actually start dismantling some of this shit now, because the problem is that there's no way that we can scale this up to make it better.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem. They want to keep selling us on the idea that no, just buy more stuff and that'll make this better. We'll be able to use those funds to make things better. And meanwhile, you've got this pile of crap sitting in your house, not doing anything and wasting resources, energy, but all the stuff that took to get to you. And that's the problem is instead of, addressing the fact that why aren't we just going outside, they want you to buy more stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I think it needs to be dismantled, rebuild, start again, right? Because all we're doing is just kind of throwing more bricks on a faulty foundation.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just blow it up, start again, take the good bricks that survive, take the good stuff and actually build something solid out of it.
And that's the problem. It's a foundation that's already faulty and has proven to be faulty and has been nothing but destructive for us. And we have the definitive proof and you can't deny that it's sitting right in front of us. And that's kind of the issue is that all that's been going on right now is la 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 la, because again we have these biases inside our head that want to simplify everything and say I can't do anything, so I'll just shut it off.
Yeah.
Well, and the idea of change is difficult for a lot of people, right?
Absolutely.
It's scary. It's unknown. Like I might not like my life, but it's comfortable, so I guess I'm just gonna keep plugging away.
No, it's easy to do that, right?
Absolutely. That's what everyone's kind of fallen into. Not everyone, but the majority.
Yeah, the majority.
But you want to know the best way to enact change is with support. Mm-hmm. Right? If you really want to change something, isn't having a friend along with you for the ride way better?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's, again, part of this problem here is that, they try to sell us community, right? But in reality, that community should be just found outside naturally instead of having these, and the problem is that it's these constructs around us that have made it more difficult for us to find those natural connections. And you'd be surprised how just by putting down your phone and actually talking to someone, how you could forge a real connection with them and have something that goes beyond what we can talk to each other over text with or. And that, again, kind of speaks to the root of this, why smart people make bad decisions, is because that's what we've been told to do.
But Aaron, that takes work to make a real connection. And
again, that's why support, right? Like if you had a group of people whose only goal was to just, get to know each other, right? And just try to make things a little better for each other and just have a system of like, hey, you're having, like, I'm not good at this, but you're good at that. Awesome. Sweet. So if we do a little thing here, we could help each other out and we could all get better at what we're doing or whatever we want to do, it seems like we've lost sight of what matters in this world, and we don't have a very long time to reassess this before it's going to reassess us. It feels like.
Well, I'm genuinely concerned about fossil fuels, the finite number of fossil fuels available, right? With oil and gas, petroleum-based products. I mean, we know that stuff's not going to be around. It's not going to be around for another 200 years. What are we doing about it?
Can't be. It just can't be. But the CEOs still want to sell us on the idea that they're the ones that are going to help us through this.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm just saying that it. I mean, it can't be. But I'm also saying, like, at some point there's going to be nothing left to mine, right? They're not going to be deposits of any of that stuff available.
I mean, at the rate we're going, probably a lot sooner than we think.
The governor of California has apparently signed an order to ban all oil extraction by 2030, I think. Like literally just stopping. And California has apparently a lot of oil. Just the only way they can get it is through fracking. Right. And so
hey, watch your tongue
there. Oh, shit. Sorry. But he's apparently signed an order ending it, right? Just saying no more. We're going to end production,
right?
And we're going to stop pulling this shit out of the ground. And he's the first, senator, whatever, governor in U.S. history to do that in a state that was mainly built in oil. In apparently the 1920s, there was shitloads of oil extraction going on around there. And it's now been in decline, and so now they've finally just decided that it can't help us move forward, and so they're just ending it. And that's unfortunately, I think, kind of where we're going to have to go with this, is just find some way of retraining these people so that they have something to look forward to. I think that's the only way. Again, we have to offer support, right? That's the only way we're going to get through this, is together.
Well, and there has to be, I mean, the demand for it is so high, right? So there needs to be everyone coming together to say, okay, I'm willing to momentarily inconvenience myself by not having my, fuel guzzling vehicle until we find a different alternative. But most people are not willing to be inconvenienced. Right. So it's okay. No, I'll just keep driving until there's something else, but I'm not willing to be part of the solution. Right. Yeah. So if there's still money coming in, then that's why we're in this predicament, is because the people that are controlling it, they don't want to, stop accepting money. They want to keep making more and more.
I mean, we can't. I mean, just like the human brain, we can't change things overnight. This has to be us. We have to make the effort, of course. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but this is we have to make baby steps towards. We have to set goals and make those steps, because you can't just snap your fingers and turn off the oil industry. That's just not going to happen.
Well, see, and that's exactly the kind of attitude that they have sold us. That's the problem. That's what
they may have sold that to us, but I'm not. But that's still the reality. That's still the reality that you can't just turn this stuff off. I mean, this is what I'm talking about with nuanced conversation too. A lot of environmentalists are, and activists are just like there's no nuance in the conversation. They just want to like, oh yeah, we got to get rid of the oil industries overnight. Well, that's just not realistic, man.
Well, but,
kind of how we started off this conversation, right? With everything's black or white. You're either right or you're wrong. You know, what happened to this? Well,
again, the issue here is, you know, we have definitive proof that this is going to kill us. So that unfortunately does become a bit of a black and white issue, right? Well, like we know it'll kill us. We know, so we have to do something. And unfortunately, it's been these incremental, you know, like, oh, we just got to figure out the steps, or we've just got to work out how to make it happen. It's unfortunately been that kind of, you know, dragging that's been screwing this whole process over, because that allows them the opportunity to offer this as some sort of debate. As if, no, if we just make the oil cleaner, it'll be better, right? Or if we just work on the extraction processes so they're cleaner, it'll be better. Now they're talking about going to a net zero. And the unfortunate problem with net zero is that they're using something else to offset it, right? And whether what they're using to offset is any cleaner than what they're doing or not is debatable as well. So the idea of them being net zero, unfortunately, is again a marketing term that we're being sold as them doing their part.
Yeah.
Instead
look
of
what we've done. Don't look over here, though. Don't look over here.
And that's the problem. And again, it but completely bypasses the question of what we need to do. What we need to do is end this. Realistically, like they've already extracted so much oil that we have a surplus that they don't want to tell you about, because they want to keep just pumping it, right? There's now too much oil sitting in the world right now, but they don't want to let you know so that they can keep on. And they want to frame this as we have to keep pumping because it's the only thing keeping the world running. But I keep going, what's it running? I mean, talking to you on YouTube right now about how we should end all this electricity shit and maybe go back to more, right? Like, you know, I get the irony of that, you know, but the unfortunate situation here is that until we come up with something better, we really need to just recognize that this is a dire threat to our existence. And I have kids who are, you know, I'm worried about their existence later on. Like I can see this decline, and I've seen it from when I was a kid. I've watched this thing progress that I kept going, this isn't going to end well, right? Like, you know, anytime you walk past a car exhaust, just tell me how cool these gases are. I just, you know, like just put your face right up to it. Come on, do it, you know, and just tell me how clean these gases are and how, you know, we need to just, if we just pump some more of this into it, we'll be able to get ourselves off of it. Right? Doesn't that sound like an addictive mentality? Right? The problem is they've addicted us to this. And unfortunately, until we actually start to dismantle this, right, we're going to have no meaningful conversations about how to fix it. You know, and unfortunately, again, that it sounds black and white, but it kind of is at this point. We've tried nuance. We've tried, you know, study after study after study after study after study after study after study that's been ignored. We've tried nuance. We've tried baby steps. You've tried, right? And it's still just careening down this path. So unfortunately, it becomes a question of, you know, how much is enough? How much nuance do we need before we just go, nope, that's good. We're done. Smart people making bad decisions.
I like how you thank you for
I'm the one making the bad decision by saying that out loud.
Thank you for bringing that back.
Yeah, well, you know, it's again like that's the problem is that, you know, that's how we make these bad decisions is by people marketing and spending millions of dollars selling us on this idea that this is our only choice. You know,
there's always a choice.
There is always a choice.
Let's make the right one, right?
Well, you know, and that's where transparency comes in. We have to be aware of what the choices are, you know, and what the pros and cons of each of them are, you know, whether these green technologies are going to help us or whether they're, again, going to be the next environmental disaster, you know. And that's where we have to actually look past the marketing of things and try to figure out whether it's beneficial or not.
Okay.
That's what we're here for. We'll sort it all out for you. Just trust us. It'll be cool. Don't worry.
Just,
we got
just
it.
Trust us. It's
gonna be. Just keep watching the podcast.
It's going to be okay.
We have all the answers right here. Do not turn away. Keep watching.
Yeah. Okay. I think we should leave it right there because I think we've clearly solved the problem. I think the world can move forward now. So there we go. Thanks for listening or watching this week. You can find our episodes on YouTube. We release Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hit that subscribe button to make sure you get every episode each and every week. If there's a topic that you want to hear about, please let us know. Drop a comment below. And you can also reach out to us on social media. We're at the Subvert Pod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also send us an email to hello@thesubvertpod.com. We're also available as an audio podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google, TuneIn and Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Alexa, all the platforms if you prefer to get it that way. We don't really care as long as you're listening. That's okay with us. That's all the time we have for this week. We'll see you next time.